Welcome to our Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting of the Exeter Township Board of School Directors. Mr. Fike, can you please take roll call?
Dr. Ann Herring.
Here.
John Fiddler.
Here.
Dr. Andrea Battler. Dr. David Hemberger.
Here.
Michael Chupina. Jason Mell.
Here.
Timothy Morgan.
Here.
Julia Schaefer.
Here.
Allison Wilson.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Fike. In addition to the 8 board members in attendance this evening, we're also joined at the board table by our solicitor, Sharon Montaigne, and members of the school district administration, including Dr. Kimberly Miner, Superintendent, Dr. Eric Flam, Director of Teaching and Learning, Mrs. Dawn Harris, Director of People Services, Dr. Christy Haller, Director of Human Resources, and Mr. Brian Fike, who serves as our Business Administrator, as well as our Board Secretary. The meeting minutes are attached. Does anybody have any changes or discussion they would like to make regarding meeting minutes for the special voting meeting from January 2nd, 2022? Committee of the Whole meeting from January 11th, 2022, as well as the board voting meeting from January 18th, 2022. We will not be amending the agenda tonight. That takes us to committees. Education Committee, Mr. Fiddler.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. The first item on the agenda is a literacy presentation by the junior high school staff. So, if you'd like to come forward.
Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Kate Sowers. I'm the librarian at the junior high school. And with us tonight are 2 out of 3 of our reading teachers. Megan Heller couldn't be here, but we've got Heather Kelly and we have Alexa Cooney with us tonight. Just to talk about our new reading program at the junior high and how much it's flourishing this year. Our reading classes this year, we have both for 7th and 8th grade. 7th and 8th graders have 1 full period of reading every other day. We have an 8th class right now, so we have 8th graders one day, 7th graders the other day. It is currently an ungraded class with a focus to connect kids with books that they love to read, give them the time to read in class, to model and practice some real world reading skills, and also to advance the students' independent reading skills. Our first goal, getting students to love reading, giving them time to read, the things that we've been doing in the classroom this year to have that happen. The first thing we did when they came into school this year was have them fill out a reading interest survey with their reading teacher. They filled it out, they let us know whether they're reading, whether they're not reading. We encouraged them to be extremely honest with us about what they hated, what they liked, what they really didn't like. And then we as teachers personally looked at every single one of those for all of our students and gave them personal recommendations for books to start. We then moved on to giving book talks, doing read alouds of specific books, letting students listen to samples of audiobooks, showing them samples of ebooks, and then using Sora, which is our digital resource, as well as the library, the physical books, and Learning Allies, which is a really great thing that we have for our students who are reading below 1 grade level, where students can read the book on a book as well as listen to a real person narrating the book at the same time. It's really powerful. We've also made it so that they have frequent full class visits to the library. Reading classes are in the library at least twice a month for instruction, and they have access to the library every single reading class. So every other day, if they want to, they can come down to the library and they can access me, they can access the books, and they can exchange books out whenever they want. They also get up to 80 minutes before of independent reading time built into this. On number 2, We like them to model and practice real world reading skills. We recognize that a lot of times in classrooms, sometimes we ask them to do things that maybe we as adults wouldn't do. So we work really hard to do things that perhaps as an adult we may actually do as readers. One thing we did in the school year, we took book selfies where they could grab one of their favorite books and take selfies with that book. We had them do book posters where they were recommending books to others. Most of you have always see those, what other kids were reading. We did author spotlights with them so they could pick their favorite authors and spotlight that author. We have those hanging too so that kids can see that. We also are encouraging them to give book recommendations to their friends. It's really cool to see them start doing that and actually passing books off and forth and borrowing books. I had a student who gave me a book today that's her personal book that I can borrow. So we're really trying to build something that we as adults do as readers in the classroom. We have something called a Friday Reading Genius Day, and that is something that kids get to choose different reading-related activities on a Friday, and so because we see them every other day, that's every other week they'll get that Friday time. One week I'll have 7th graders, the next week will be 8th graders, and during that time, it's all kinds of different activities that they're all reading related, and it's a team that they're working together. It's all based on choice, which the kids love. They love being able to have that choice. And we actually, it's an ungraded course, so they're doing these things. We've been using the behavior system, the junior high is using the TBIS system, and that has been working so well to motivate kids to, I can give them a TBIS point and they're thrilled to be able to do this assignment, which kind of cracks me up a little bit, but I really love it. It's been awesome to advance to the next slide. This is an example. This is marking 33 report. We just started marking 33. In marking 33, we have 3 choices that they can work on that Friday time. We have a story competition going right now because many of our students have talked about how much they love to write. And so we're giving them that chance, and then we're going to allow them to submit those and allow them to be read by their friends and teachers to submit. And we're going to do a vote at the end of the marking period for our favorite one. We are also allowing, we're doing an Instagram post as well as a character and a their character, how to Instagram, and what would they actually post as their character in the book. And then the final one is the comic strip. We found that there's a lot of really amazing artists, and a lot of kids are really into art. They love graphic novels. They love the fact that we have plenty of graphic novels in the library, and it's okay with us if they're allowed to read them. And they love looking novels, so we play with that. The animated book version of that. So we really felt that that was a really good fit. And we've already had kids starting their comic strips, so they're very excited about that. And they're doing this all for TGIF. They're motivated, they're excited. They really truly are. So that's really, really cool. These are some samples of things that they've created on these days. The picture on the left is some of their book posters that were hanging in the hallway. The one on the top is a favorite author that one of my students did. The one on the bottom is a bookmark that they created. We hosted a bookmark competition in marking period 2, and they got to vote on the favorite bookmark, and that's just one of the posts from them. Goal number 3 is working on managing skills. So we model reading strategies and then action plans in class. So instruction and practice usually just write books. Students are able to figure out if those books are good for them or if it's difficult or easy based off of their ability as well as their interest. Reading a book can decide if it's exciting or if it's too boring and just another book. New thing in that. And then one-on-one teacher and student monthly talk sessions. During these reading talk one other awesome thing to be able to do at junior high is to offer flexible reading in the reading classroom. Really, when I read, I don't sit in a hard desk to read. I like to sit in a comfy seat. The kids love it. We were a bit apprehensive as to how this would work at the beginning of the school year, just because I mean, you look at that, it doesn't look like a physical classroom. It looks more like I just would go to a little bit of a coffee shop kind of thing going on. That was totally the vibe we were going for. We wanted kids to be comfortable. We wanted them to watch for their reading class and have it really be a comfy place to be. The way that we run it is every month they get to pick a new piece that Mrs. He was in there. He supports the Christian stuff before or only the puppet stuff. But we do a monthly. Today is February 1st. Today was Teach Switch Day. I actually almost forgot. My third period class teacher said, Kelly, it's February 1st. It's Teach Switch Day. So whenever they have class first, one of the days month they switch teams, and it's what beautifully because they love it, they enjoy it. Again. We also work with youth leaders to really build a school-wide culture of reading. We want kids to see us reading. We want them to hear us talking about books, and we want them to understand that we have favorite books as adults too, and to really make it cool to be a reader. Because it's not always cool to be a reader, especially when you're 7th, 8th grade. We joke that we have some closet readers where like reading kind of thing. And so we want them to understand that we read too, and that it's really. So we have our selfies across the top. Mrs. Gibbons there with Many Airlines, and we do the things. I always tell them I don't ask you to do them always. And then we have our selfie boards that are still up in our classroom at the beginning of the school year. That was one of the very first Venus Day projects that we did. So there's an answer to those. So the last thing we have for you, our students created this. This is from their own mouth. I'm going to tell you this. They recorded this on their Chromebook. So their part is this. So although the digital quality may not be the best, they did this. They ran with it. And again, they did this for TGIF points. And since we're coming to present, we wanted you all to know how awesome this reading class is, how grateful that they are that they get this opportunity. So this is their thank you. Please do it. And this time, what was your favorite part of the reading class? My favorite part of the new reading class is that it's not a grade because I never liked to read, and now I can just read freely without it being graded. My favorite part about reading class is Genius Day Friday. I like how we have freedom to choose what we want to do, and we can just do whatever we want, really.
About reading class is the library.
One thing I like about reading class is that I get to read any book I want and it's super comfortable.
I like that reading class isn't graded and we get to relax our mind with reading books.
One thing I enjoy about reading class is how it's basically like everything's here and I can just read the book.
What I like about the reading class is I like all the extra reading time and completely in the room.
I like that I get more time to read, and also that they read aloud. There's kind of a lot of good books like this.
One thing that I like about reading class is that it's not graded and you don't have to stress about another grade. about reading class is that we have an open library. You can go anytime, and we have lots of books there. And then we have comfy spots at the library. My favorite time when we go to the library for reading class, and we get to sit in the comfy chairs and read. My favorite part about reading.
My favorite part about this new school, the new reading class is that it allows you to read your favorite books, and it's a fun, quiet, and enjoyable class that you can always go and know that you're gonna have a good time.
One thing I like about reading class is you get to sit on comfy seats and all you do is read and it's not creative.
One thing I really enjoy about reading class is having the comfy chairs around the classroom because it's just nice for me to sit down and read my book comfortably.
One thing I like about reading class is that you can read books in a comfy spot.
One thing that I like about reading class is that I get to read my book around my friends and being comfortable at the same time.
Part about reading class is the fact that we can have comfy seats and have our own books to read. My favorite part about reading class is that you can choose your own books.
My favorite thing about reading is the comfy seating and the teaching.
My favorite thing about reading is seating.
Okay, so I like reading class because it's a non-graded class and you just sit there and read all the time. And we also have the team Fridays, so I do some other. So yeah, I do really reading class.
In class because I get to choose what I want to read.
My favorite part about reading this year is all the comfy furniture that we get to relax on. My favorite part about reading class is being able to pick our own seats.
What I enjoy most about the reading class this year is that it's a stress-free period, and I can go into this class knowing that I don't need to study for anything, and that I can just go in and relax.
What I like about reading class is that I can look over lots of new books, and it's really quiet and peaceful, and I can ungraded so I don't have to worry about doing homework or having to do grades.
My favorite part of reading class is that it's not graded and we have class competition every quarter.
My favorite thing about the reading class is the English short story, and we have a reading class on time.
My favorite part about reading is how we can read peacefully without doing any graded assignments.
My thing about reading class this year is that it's not graded and that we can read other books. And yeah.
Hi, my name is Braden. The thing I like the most about reading class is that you get to find new books and then see what like you actually like to read, and actually like get the chance to read more with like peace and quiet and not getting interrupted.
My favorite part of reading class is I just get to chill and get into all my other classes.
There's a lot of things so great about reading class, but I think my favorite one is just like a whole class period to just read.
Yeah, I like that it's like not graded, so then all like the pressure of trying to make sure you're doing everything correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
To try to get the best grade possible.
Yeah.
Out of like all the other classes are graded, but this one is not.
I'm just happy that you're not graded on reading.
Yeah, we're not graded on our reading.
Yeah.
Because we'd be a late class for that.
Exactly.
Our favorite part of reading is going to the library to find a book.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about reading class is getting food that is okay. That is good.
My favorite thing about reading class is being able to sit in a comfy seat and not sit at a desk for 45 minutes. We like reading because it gives us so much adventures.
Yeah, but that's all we have. Thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to share.
Does anybody have any questions for the group?
I actually have a couple questions. First, I just wanted to say that I've heard about this class and I've heard great things about it, and the students are really excited about it. So that's exciting when we hear things like that. My question is, how many minutes are they actually spending reading per day?
So, majority of the time we have reading classes given to read. We see them depending on which week. I'll see them every other day. So some weeks I'll see them for twice a week, and the next week will be 3 times. So we always have at least 2 class periods that's reading, and then on a Friday it's that Genius Day. So that was, we're looking at 80 minutes is what we're looking at. Now, I mean, sure, there could be a little bit of entry time and that kind of thing, but ideally about 80 minutes for getting to it. I mean, and occasionally we'll have them do a quick 5-minute thing at the end. So sometimes you might pull a little bit of time out of that. But I would say about 80 minutes.
Have we seen an increase in books going out in the library, in the circulation?
Last time I checked was 30 days ago, and there was a 25% increase in book circulation from the year before the pandemic. I didn't think it was fair to judge the pandemic. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I had a question if I could. The students, do they have access to electronic books?
Yeah.
Okay,
Through
is that part of the
Sora,
program?
Overdrive eBooks, it's called Sora now. So we have electronic ebook library, 7 through 12 have access to it, and we have seen that really skyrocket as well this year. Students are very interested in, there's a lot of students who like to read on their Chromebooks. Having said that, there are a lot of students who also hate to read on their Chromebooks and prefer a paper book. So we let them have the choice of whichever way works best for them.
And does the library still maintain a selection of newsprint, magazines, journals, that sort of thing?
Honestly, a few years before the pandemic, that was slashed from our budget, and I requested that I be able to start doing that again this year. So right now we have 5 periodicals that are going out, and I just put that back in the budget for this coming year, asking for $500 so that I can have those magazines going out. Right, Sports Illustrated and Sports Illustrated Kids right now, every time the students see that they're on the shelf, can I take that? Can I read that? I'm like, of course you can read that. That's what you can take it down off the shelf and read it. They're very excited about it.
I have a question. Just curious, and maybe it's directed more towards the district, but what do we have a good working relationship with our Exeter Community Library and the district, and what have we been doing to try to work together or utilize their books if we can't find a book, just things like that?
They're absolutely amazing. I love them. I literally, if I can't find the book in the junior high library or right there in the high school, I pull up the public library site right there and I'll look for it and say, do you have a library card? If you don't have a library card, I'm going to print off exactly how you can get one, and here's how you get the books. In addition to that, last year I showed everyone we should do this again. The students, there's a way that they can connect their Sora account, their ebook account from the public library and our library together if they have a library card. But I do agree that that's something that we should do forward. We should be more integrated with them. So that's something that we can look into doing in the future.
2 questions. Has a student ever brought a title or an author to you and asked if you could get a book? All the
Every
time?
day.
Oh, good.
Every day.
How about Harry Potter?
Harry Potter goes out of the library all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the disturbing headline. This is just what I needed. Disturbing headline today about a pastor, I believe in Tennessee, who was arranging a book burning. Doesn't that break your heart?
It does.
And the Harry Potter books were on his list of books that were going to be burned.
That breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Almost all the Harry Potter books are out of the library right now. They're very
Good.
popular again.
The other question, I saw something on one of the slides about writing stories. Is writing about books students read, is that part of the reading program?
So we don't have them do large writings about the books. I'm not a big fan of book reports because I don't like to do that as an adult myself. So I wouldn't say it's large writings that we do at all, because that's more in classification students, kinds of larger writings. We also have both courses. We have them do small writings about what they're reading, and ours tend to be more book recommendation oriented, that kind of thing, recommending those books to others. Things that you as an adult might actually post on like a Goodreads post or something, or write or review on Amazon about a book, because those are the things that will probably have built on you as adults in real life. I'm not writing book reports, so I don't know if that answer your question.
No, that's fine. It's part of my writing career included book reviews. So maybe we have some future book reviewers.
Yeah. And we didn't include that, but we had to actually have them, our card catalog through the library has the ability to do that for time kids. That was an option one market period where they could go onto the card catalog and review that book, and this is how it's been reviewed. And then it was up on the card catalog for other people to look through. We looked those up, but they're still doing it. I just approved 2 of them today. I had students in the library today, and then 2 more that came through. They come through like on a weekly basis.
Wonderful. Good. Thank you.
Mr. Fiddler,
Other questions?
oh, may I just make a statement? I just would like to say that these women who teach the reading course and our librarian, Ms. Sowers, are just absolutely phenomenal to work with. We had great conversations this summer about their visions to carry this out, and I don't know that I've ever worked with secondary teachers who had so much enthusiasm for kids and books, and they have just knocked my socks off. But every time I go to the junior high, I love to stop by and just to see kids quietly reading in like a soothing environment. I think, one of the takeaways listening to all the kids is there's so much stress in the lives of everybody right now, and to actually have a place that's, when you walk in, it's just serene, and to see that many teenagers actively engaged in reading their books, not talking to each other, not pinching. I mean, I think they really just thoroughly enjoy their teachers and the environment they've created and the books. And I just can't say enough good things about this team at the junior high. They are really knocking it out of the park for kids. So I want to thank them personally.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Next, we will hear from our superintendent, Dr. Miner.
Okay. Sheldon, can I have the whole screen? All right, I'm going to be providing a mid-year overview of where we are with some of our district data. In the beginning of the school year, I showed you slides about where our students were with their reading at our 3 K to 4 buildings. And as you know, one of our goals is 100% reading proficiency in 3rd grade. We know that this is a multi-year goal, but we said we would stop periodically and check on our progress that they have made to date. So I'm going to take you through a lot of slides, and I'm going to try to point out some really exciting elements of them. So this was Jackson Wald's kindergarten at the fall. And if you remember, that white line that goes horizontally through the graph is the proficiency benchmark. And the blue color is students who are on watch. They're not quite where we want them to be. The yellow are kids who need an intervention of some kind. They're enough below the benchmark. And then the red is kids who urgently needed an intervention. So just to remind you of the things that we have done thus far this year in just the first semester, we've completely changed our reading program to the Faunus and Pinnell classroom. So our teachers had a ton to learn, and they've really done a fabulous job executing that. And then also we changed our response to intervention model, and our teachers also had new materials to work with and new things to learn. So this data is even more exciting and amazing, given the fact that all the teachers were new to all of these materials. You can see what phenomenal work they did. So this is Jackson Wald's kindergarten now. And these charts are a little tricky, so I want to draw your attention to the fact that the bottom of the fall chart started at 500. The bottom of the winter chart starts at 600. And the line for proficiency was below 700, and now it's at 730. So it's a moving target. Even with that, like, you can see a dramatic difference in the number of kids now in kindergarten who are proficient and how many fewer kids are in need of an urgent intervention. So in just half a year, they've done an amazing job of getting kids much closer to where we want them to be. And an important thing in our philosophy is the earlier we can intervene for kids and have them be successful readers, the better that is. The longer they go without being successful, the more difficult it is to change that for them. This is Lorraine, again, all the same things, 500 to 600, where the line is, this is their fall. And then this is Lorraine's data now. And again, you can see a tremendous amount of growth in the number of kids who are in the green, a tremendous reduction of kids who are in the red and the yellow. So they've really been doing an outstanding job. Hawaiian Creek, their fall,
and Watton Creek's winner. Again, you can just see how many kids are over that proficiency line much more solidly, even though that line has gone up, and such a significant reduction in the kids who need intervention. So we're really very pleased with the kindergarten data across the board. First grade is challenging in terms of using the STAR data. So that kindergarten report was based on the STAR screening report, because at the beginning of first grade, they take the STAR early literacy, and in the fall and the winter, they take the STAR reading assessment. And so it's not really comparing apples to apples. So in first grade, we look instead at where they are with their benchmark assessment, which is called the BAS. That's an F&P where the students read the books to the teacher, and the teacher notates errors, that sort of thing, and determines where they are in a leveling system that has a prescribed goal for each part of the year. So in first grade, students are expected, if they're on grade level, to be at a D at the beginning of the year, and by this point in the winter to be at a level G. And so Jackson Wald's first grade saw a 4% increase at students who are at grade level in this first half of the year. And of those not yet at grade level, 60% have gone up 3 levels or more. So first grade's really had a challenge this year because so many kids came out of kindergarten with the pandemic and everything else not really having gotten to a D. And that journey to a D is really challenging, and then kids tend to take off. So I'm really excited to see how this plays out winter to spring, given that getting these kids up 3 levels means that they're in that D, E, and F range for the most part. Same with Lorraine. They've had a 5% increase total at the grade level, and of those not yet at grade level, 72% of them have made growth of 3 levels or more in the first half of the year. And at Watton Creek, it was an 8% increase towards students who were at the grade level expectation, and of those not yet at grade level, 55% have gone up 3 levels or more. So at first grade, it's such a challenging year for teachers and such a huge year of growth for kids. They really go from just barely reading simple text to actually being readers. So again, they're doing a phenomenal job in all of our first grades. In second grade for Jackson Wald, now this is the STAR reading. So the kindergarten ones were the STAR early literacy. So the scale is different here. But again, it all basically means the same thing. You can see the horizontal benchmark line. And then you can see where they are in the winter. And again, here, the bottom of the fall starts at 600. The bottom of the winter starts at 700. So you have to kind of picture the graphs. So you can't really line them up because the numbers are a little bit different. You had to be at about an 860 in the fall. Now you have to be at about an 890 to be proficient. And again, in Jackson Wald second grade, you can see the tremendous growth in students who are proficient and the significant reduction in students who are in need of an intervention. It's very impressive data. Lorraine, same chart, and Lorraine now. And again, you can see them shrinking the number of students. Actually, I think that's shrinking the number of students. You can see it's 900 again. So they've done a nice job there as well. And then at Watton Creek, you can see a dramatic increase in their second graders' proficiency level and a dramatic reduction in their students in need of intervention in the second grade at Watton Creek. In Jackson Wald's third grade, that's the fall numbers. And the winter numbers, again, you can see a remarkable decrease in the number of students who are in that urgent intervention category. We're already starting to get at the point where a lot of the students who remain at urgent intervention already have IEPs or identified as needing special education support. So we'll start to see kind of that separation of students who really need an individualized education plan to get where they're going and reading, but a significant movement of kids out of the urgent intervention into the intervention and out of the on-watch category into being proficient readers. And then Lorraine fall and Lorraine winter. Again, a really nice increase in the number of students who are reading proficiently. Again, a changing bar, but they're making good gains, particularly in the group of students who are on watch, moving them into proficiency. And then a Watton Creek in the fall, and a Watton Creek in the winter. Again, I'm very excited about the number of students who are over that proficiency line. That's now at 950, and you can see it was previously about 940. maybe it's about 960 now. But again, really nice growth. And it does get much harder to see rapid growth now as we hit 3rd and 4th grade. Watton Creek's 4th grade data and their data now. Again, they're sustaining, but it gets increasingly hard because the students have already gone through several years where they weren't intervened for. Jackson Wald's 4th grade. Jackson Wald's 4th grade has really seen a nice condensing of the students who were at risk in that blue category into being proficient. And again, here the bar has changed, so they're moving along quite nicely. And then Lorraine's 4th grade, and again, you can see a nice increase in the number of students who are proficient in Lorraine's 4th grade, a nice decrease, particularly in the areas of students who need intervention or urgent intervention. So you can imagine that the blue students in the fall have moved to green, the yellow have moved over to blue, and the red into the yellow. So sometimes it looks like all of the categories are shrinking because they're all moving over one level at a time. So I'm extremely pleased with where we've gotten in the first half of the year, and knowing that we have the whole second half of the year to go, and the compounding effect of doing these things year over year. So students who are meeting with success in kindergarten who leave kindergarten this year at a D, that will be a really important number to watch, because if they go into 1st grade at a D, that's so much easier then for those teachers to take them through E and the upper levels. So I'm extremely pleased with all of the data that's coming out of the elementary schools. Our teachers and students are really doing an amazing job. I do have 2 more data slides, but they pertain to the high school. So if there are any questions about these slides first, I'd be happy to take them.
Dr. Miner, what's going on in the classroom to result in these changes?
Well, there's a number of really important things. First we have a lot of really high quality instruction, and the teachers have, I think, have been working incredibly hard for many, many years, but prior to last year they were basically working with photocopies rather than real books. And the school board made a significant investment in the Fountas and Pinnell classroom materials, and so now they have tons of books to choose from. They have a lot of guidance in the form of cards that go along with each book, written by Fountas and Pinnell. And so they're doing independent reading, they're doing shared reading, they're doing interactive read alouds, they're doing guided reading, and they have, for the first time, really a tremendous array of materials and support in the form of those lesson plan cards. They also have the support of our literacy coordinator, Claire McCrae, who goes around and models lessons, works with teachers, and she's been an amazing help and support. And then our students this year are benefiting from a response to intervention model and an increase in the number of reading specialists and ESL teachers. In the past, the district used reading aides to work with our most struggling students. Now we're able to use teachers who are not only classroom teachers, but are in fact trained reading specialists. And so having that level of expertise and the really small student to teacher ratio, I think all of those factors combined, and that was the plan, that was the design of the plan, was to be able to make aggressive strides in reading to build that systems model, so that, again, each subsequent year, the 4th graders next year will come up higher than this year's 3rd graders, and as you build on that over time, I think we will get to that 100% goal.
So we're seeing some of the things that we just heard about in 7th and 8th grade.
It's really great. The amazing thing about reading is, in the past, schools everywhere spend so much time on worksheets and memorizing what color coat was so-and-so wearing, and really made reading a chore for students, and not having good materials really makes reading a chore for the adults. And so again, the board's investment in the high quality materials, the additional reading specialists, I think you can already see in just basically 12 weeks the extent to which that's really paying off for our kids.
Great, thank you. One other question. And what about the kids who are still in the red and yellow? What kinds of initiatives are directed at them?
That's a great question. So what happens is that we had the beginning of the year data collection where all the students took the STAR early literacy or reading depending on their grade level. And then based on that, the students who are in the yellow or the red who need intervention or urgent intervention, were then given a benchmark assessment by a reading specialist to confirm that in fact their STAR data was accurate. I always like to use a comparison. STAR data is like going to the doctor and getting your pulse ox and your blood pressure, and then a BAS is more like you get a CT scan, like what's really going on. So the reading specialist did that assessment, and then they work in these groups. For the urgent intervention kids, they're 1 to 4 with the reading specialist, so it's a lot of small personalized attention in a very intense and supportive intervention program called level of literacy intervention. And so we do that for 12 weeks, and then right now we're actually in pause at all of the elementary schools while we collect data again. So first they took the STAR, the reading specialists are now giving the benchmark assessment again, and then in a week or so we'll start up with new groups. Kids will be switched, kids who have now made progress and they don't need as much support will move out, etc. And we'll start that over again for the next 12 weeks, and we'll wrap up in mid-May.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Miner, so this program is new, correct? This is the first year we're using it. So I don't want to call it a pilot, but since this is year 1, what's the district's plan as far as professional development goes? So we've gotten through, I know we're only halfway through, but, say we get through year 1, what do we do to kind of break it apart and see what worked, what didn't work, what we need to improve on? How does that work for the employees?
Well, Fathers and Fidel is really an interesting program and a completely different approach than traditional like anthologies, for instance, or other programs where you go page by page through a teacher's manual. And so it really relies very much on the teachers looking at the students in front of them and then making decisions. So they can, for instance, the mini lesson books have like 230 lessons. We have 180 days of school. So teachers are having to make choices. So one of the big things that is happening in the course of this year is teachers are learning in real time which lessons work for which kinds of student needs. And I'm sure they're keeping good notes of that so that next year there's not as much guessing in terms of which lessons accomplish which goals with their students. The professional development is really designed to be job embedded. So having Claire McCrae go in and model lessons with teachers. She's doing that all year round. You go in and take a group of kids and teach them the guided reading lesson while the teacher watches. She's doing that all year round. So the focus is really, we had a couple of big days on how to do the BAS and so forth, but the focus is that constant job embedded all year, every year, because you always have different readers, you always have things that are changing, and it is really a complex program. So it's unusual in that it is, Claire's purpose in being here is that year-round PD.
Dr. Miner, the data that you presented, does it include students who have IEPs and ESL students?
It includes students who have IEPs and ESL students, with the exception of students who are unable to take a test like STAR reading or unable to participate in response to intervention, like an MDS student, something along those lines. For the most part, students with IEPs are included in the tiers, and to some extent, I would say most of them are. And same with ESL students. We include ESL students. Actually, we tend to like to include ESL students at the tier 1 level, which is the junior grade books or inquiry level, because it's about language exposure and conversation. A lot of kids just catch on. They don't actually have specific reading needs per se. They just need to get a grip on the language and then their core instruction in the classroom. If we find an ESL student isn't making good progress with that methodology, LLI has really good research that supports ESL learners. And with the hiring of additional ESL teachers, and now we have an ESL teacher at each of the elementary buildings, we're actually assigning a tier 3 group, a 1 to 4 ratio, with an ESL teacher and targeting ESL students into that group. So the ESL teacher has that skill set with English language learning, and some of them are dual certified as reading specialists, as well as ESL or as special ed teachers, and that's been a really tremendous addition.
I'm assuming you can't really give the STAR test in the student's native language.
We can give the STAR test in Spanish, which can be really nice for school psychologists to determine whether or not a student can read in their native language and has the skill sets, as long as it's Spanish. But that's the only other language that the test is offered in.
Also, just a final question: how is this progress, student progress reported? I mean, is this part of the student report card? Is this a separate communication? How do families get information about this kind of data change?
So we asked the teachers to use one of the STAR reports at conferences and to show the data to parents to explain where their children have strengths and where they have areas to improve, and then to talk specifically about what they're doing with their child to move them along that trajectory. And in the case of students who are receiving interventions with specialists, we've included those specialists in on the conferences as well. So we'll do the same thing in spring to make sure that parents can see the alignment between how their child is doing and then what actions the teachers are taking in the classroom.
Is the student data, is it archived in some manner for the parent, and are they able to access it historically to kind of?
So the parents are actually given a paper copy, at each report card, so certainly they can hold on to those. If a parent, wanted to look archivally at something, we could produce a report like that, but we don't do it as a matter of normal business.
Dr. Marner, are students allowed to bring books home other than library books in the elementary levels?
Do you mean like the books that they're using in their Fauna
Yes.
Sapel? They're not allowed to use bring the Fauna Sapel classroom books home, with the exception of in the leveled literacy. Part of that program is there are black and white versions of the book, and the students do bring them home in a backpack every night. That's part of the program, is for them to do that. And then if teachers have other, classroom lending libraries that they allow students to bring books home, they can bring those. But the books that are either guided reading or shared reading, they're part of the classroom, and they stay in the classroom.
Is the district still encouraging at the elementary level the use of reading eggs and EPIC?
Yes, reading eggs in particular is still being encouraged. It's, especially at K1, it can be a really nice way for students to get into reading, and because it's device agnostic, they can do it on their parents' iPhone, etc. So we really do encourage that there. EPIC is encouraged more through the libraries, that sort of thing. It's not part of the core instructional program. And then we also have iPads that are set up with a program called BookFlix, where the books are classic books are animated, and you can listen to the readers that kids can use in station reading, so they can hear more reading. Because a lot of times that's a really important part of students' reading move. If there are no other questions on those, then the next two slides are about the high school. So, I'm sorry, that should say 18, 19, not 1919, my apologies. So the graduation rate from 1819 is what's reported in U.S. News World Report for 2021. And that was 89% of Exeter students were graduating. And again, as a board, along with me, we decided that setting a 100% graduation goal was important. Having a student go through Exeter for 13 years and then leave with nothing is not what any of us want. And 89% meant that 1 out of every 10 Exeter students was not graduating. I think that's just a very alarming number of students to be at that point in 1819. So again, we've set our goal at 100%. We know that that's a multi-year process. Part of looking at that was looking at where were other school districts in the county, again, in 1819, reported in 2021. They have quite a lag at U.S. News. That ranked Exeter as 15th out of 18 in the county in terms of our graduation rate. And again, I don't think that's where any of us expect Exeter to be in terms of countywide rankings. So last year, we made a real push towards the 100% reading goal. Mr. Campbell, his team of guidance counselors, all of the teachers in the building, they really worked tremendously hard in a triage type situation to improve the graduation rate. And now the next presentation will be Mr. Campbell talking about the Soaring Eagle. We've learned a lot of lessons about what we had to do to triage kids last year that we can build into the system. And so positions like the intervention position that Mr. Esselman took is really important. Positions like the academic support person are really important. Identifying kids at risk early in their career at the high school instead of at the 11th hour is really critical to continuing to improve that. But all of that said, with their amazing effort last year, the high school, and this won't show up in U.S. News for quite a while, had a graduation rate of 96%, which is a tremendous improvement in 1 year's time and during the pandemic. Assuming that everybody else's data stayed the same as 1819 and Exeter had come in with this level back in 1819, we would have ranked first in the county. So it was a huge lift on the part of the high school team, and I think they've really done an excellent job of assessing the lessons that they've learned through the triage and how they can build a system that's much stronger.
What's the profile of a student who doesn't graduate? Is there sort of an overall profile?
I think there are a lot of risk factors. I don't know that there's a specific profile. A lot of times we see students who have had a lot of transients, students who have difficulty in their home lives, students who have had an unsuccessful experience with school. I'm sure Mr. Campbell could speak to a little more detail in terms of what it looked like in terms of their students who struggled last year. Sometimes students can have mental health issues. Sometimes they can just be disengaged with school, disconnected, not feel like they have adult connection. So it's hard to say that there's a profile per se, but there are a lot of red flags. Anything from their scores coming out of 8th grade into 9th grade, their attendance, just the amount of time they have disciplinary infractions, those sorts of things. So the team is getting good at looking for those red flag patterns and then assigning that academic support person to those kids to case manage them and take the kids that are most at risk, and then continually assess based on credit acquisition, course failures, etc. as they move through.
Dr. Miner, following up on Mike's question, if we don't have a profile, have we looked at the relationship between a student who isn't graduating and what's going on in the home? I don't mean just poverty or just transients or frequent job changes or no jobs, but what kind of support those kids are getting or not getting at home. Has anyone studied that either here at the district or ECIU or at one of the major universities?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, and that definitely impacts students at all grade levels. The amount of support they have at home, their ability, for instance, if they have to watch all their siblings, there's a lot of, if they have to work to support, there's a lot of things that make it challenging for students outside of the school day. So we have, through ESSER grant funds, started to add in after-school tutoring for students so that, if they don't have a parent who can help them and they do need more academic help, then beyond the school day, we can do that. And, in our academic support position, we look to make connections with outside agencies and other things that may be able to support the family in a way that the student can be more successful. Another thing that we did last year, and really it's just starting to get up and running now, is add the internships. So, a student has their eye on a career that can be extremely engaging and a motivator for them to come to school, and then a very productive use of their diploma to go right into the world of work or to study a career that they might be interested in before they commit to the expense of a 4-year degree in it and determine whether or not they're really interested. So there are a number of initiatives, but I think, again, the high school has a really nice complement of guidance counselors, special education teachers, this academic support position to look at the unique factors that are contributing to a student's difficulty. Sometimes students are parents. That's a real challenge if you have a baby at home. So it is highly variable, but I think they do a really nice job. And part of the goal, again, has been to have enough support personnel that they can actually take the time to look into the needs of the student. Mr. Campbell, I don't know if you want to come up, and Mrs. Harris, if you have anything you want to add, because a lot of the supports come from Mrs. Harris's department in terms of what we've done in that line.
I'll start. Actually, I want to just touch on Mr. Chapina and Mr. Fitter's questions. I think the idea of the profile is very, very difficult to nail down. And one of the things that's impressed me the most in working through this over the last year is how dialed in our counselors in particular, but also many of the teachers are with the students who are at risk and understanding those individual stories, because at that level, the difference between that and 100% are incredibly personal individual stories that in many cases we've seen coming and have worked tremendously hard and just weren't quite there. So we know those kids, we know those families, and we have made all kinds of efforts to try to put those supports there to close that gap, and we'll continue to do so. And that's one of the things that I really want to express appreciation for, is that support that's gone to several of those positions that have become really critical as we look forward. Dr. Miner mentions Mr. Usselman and his intervention teacher. I mean, the dozens of cases that he is managing at any given time, some of whom are like daily interventions he's working with, if actually scheduled with him. The supervisor of clinical or supervisor of academic supports has been a real partner. So Melissa Devlin and Mr. Usselman are really working closely so that she's helping overcome some of the structural barriers. And the internship, I think, has blossomed tremendously. I just met with Mr. Ricketts today. And it is incredibly neat to see how much he has thrown his ambition at that, and the number of opportunities that provides for kids. We're expanding that into junior year, and we're adding a summer opportunity, so that provides additional flexibility for students to explore some of those post-secondary goals and orient more of their classes toward their post-secondary goals. So I appreciate the support of all those programs tremendously.
And now I will just take a moment to include Mr. Campbell in those supports, because he didn't mention himself, and the high school team is a team and coordinates so well under his leadership. So just wanted to remind you that you forgot yourself in that little speech that you just gave. But Dr. Miner often talks about systems and triage, and she has to remind me of that quite frequently when our pupil services team gets a little overwhelmed with some of the things that we're tackling right now, you know, in the midst of the pandemic and coming post-pandemic. But last year, admittedly, was a lot of triage, I would say, Mr. Campbell, in terms of us working with students to figure out what all of those barriers were that were preventing them from successfully graduating. But working through that triage, we've discovered some systems and are continuing to build those systems so that it's less triage and more of a systems approach moving forward, so that we're more proactive instead of reactive in terms of figuring out what students need to be successful.
Mr. Campbell, I wonder if you could talk for a minute. I know that you guys have an open student support coordinator that we just talked about at the last meeting, and I'm sure that's going to help. You guys talk a lot about triage and how we identify these kids and creating a profile to identify those kids. You know, when we think of graduation, we think of 12th grade. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you're identifying those at-risk kids before they're in 12th grade. I'm sure a lot of your time in the last 12 to 18 months has been some of that, the upper class students, but I would assume as this program continues to unravel that you're going to be able to identify those kids at a much younger age, and that triage work will happen at a much different level.
Yeah, that's exactly what our next steps are. Now that we have taken some of those lessons from last year and really started to take the supports that we have and have the Mr. Usselman, Ms. Devlin, working with students not in 12th grade as much, but in 9th through 12th, and trying to build that foundation. It's going to take a while for us to really get dialed in exactly how that system should be, but I do think that we have a lot of the markers that we're looking for. I mean, academics, attendance, and behavior. It's three things that we're constantly looking at for all students, and they become those warning flags. So they come in various combinations and various forms, but those are the things that we're constantly watching as we see to look for students who need to be looked at more closely. It is pretty remarkable that when you take those and then apply that just personal relationship that you have with those kids who hit that mark, that you really start to understand what's the why behind those individual kids. I remember one conversation with one counselor very beginning of last year, and she said, this kid is the one I'm worried about right now. She was looking 180 days out. She knew it from the previous 3 years, and as strong as our performance was last year, we had to really scoop him up in the summer after graduation. So although he's counted in our graduates for last year, it took more than the year to get him across that bar. And I think it's a sign that beyond those quantitative markers, we also have those relational understandings of those individuals at that highest level.
Okay, Tom, go right ahead.
All right, thank you. We could, Mark, you could present the summary of changes for the Soaring Eagle. All right, so we have some minor changes that are always in, just taking a look at some points for clarity, directory names, typographical errors. But the ones of note are the ones in the next section. The first of those has to do with our AP course weight. While we believe that our students are really capable of achieving 3s and higher on the AP exam, we also don't want to discourage any students in attempts to take that AP test. So we're removing that requirement for 3 or higher for the weight, and students who take the test will be awarded a weight of 1.10 regardless of their score. The next section has to do with some changes of course names and offerings. The first of those is in special ed. The social studies courses there, the transitions 1 and 2 have existed, and there's a lot of overlap in those, and due to some scheduling constraints, we've taken a step back to look at those, and we're going to combine those courses into a multi-year program that is much more aligned to the
Excuse me, Mr. Campbell. I wonder if we could get the slide.
Sure.
Sorry, didn't mean to.
No, thank you.
Mr. Campbell, while we wait, is it possible, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
In regards to the AP exam, with the 1.10 weighting, that eliminates the weighting that was tied to the scores of the exam. Is that correct? That's eliminating that because I believe the weighting was only tied to if you got a 3 or better.
Correct.
So the weighting is 1.10 if you take the exam. Can you explain why we increase the rating whether or not you take the exam or not for an AP course?
Yeah, because the AP course is really oriented toward, and from the College Board in terms of their putting their seal on that, their approval of those curricula, it is really oriented towards that test and preparing students for that test so that they have that, I'll call it currency, that they can take to colleges across the nation is recognized for being a standard measure of what that student learned in that course. So we do think that preparation for that is what we want students to do. And they're in a course that's designed for it. They've got instruction that's going to prepare them for it. And we really want students to take advantage of that opportunity so that they have that with them when they go off and apply to colleges and enroll and take get the maximum benefit from many schools for the credit that they can carry with them because of that test score.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll let you carry on.
All right, thank you. So to the special ed, we are taking those transitions 1 and 2 classes and restructuring those into a multi-year course that is going to allow more students in those and better articulate with each other and also with the other social studies classes in regular education. In social studies, we are adding courses and changing the sequence of 9th and 10th grade over the next 2 years. So next year we will be adding AP Human Geography and Global Studies, and that will be the 9th grade social studies course. Then the current 9th graders, or the current next year's 9th graders, then will take American cultures in 10th grade. So after next year we'll have AP Human Geography and Global Studies in 9th, and then American history will be 10th grade. 11th grade will continue to be the civics class for all juniors, and then the 12th grade will be a variety of electives, everything from military history, world history, economics, psychology. The addition of the AP Human Geography and Global Studies in 9th grade is an opportunity for kids to be exposed to AP curricula, as well as see their capabilities with that. AP Human Geography is an excellent choice for an introduction. It's often looked at as a gateway to AP programming and is commonly provided for 9th grade classes. In our world language program, we are phasing out Latin due to declining enrollment over several years. I'm very proud of our world language enrollment across the board. We've seen numbers that are stable and in some of the languages actually increasing over several years. And I think the changes that we made in junior high are also going to contribute to that in the longer term. Latin has not seen that same subscription, so we will not offer Latin next year. We will continue to allow students who are in the program to continue their studies. Exeter, by the way, is not unique in that. There's been a couple of schools that have dropped their Latin programs in recent years. I think at this point there's 4 schools in the county that have Latin. In Tech Ed, Mr. Martin's going to scroll to the next page, please. Tech Ed, there's one change to curriculum and then some name changes. The Technical and Computer Drawing 1 and 2 are being merged, and that is largely a result of the skills in those courses being integrated into some of the other courses that we have already in the program. Our Tech Ed department does a nice job of keeping up with changes in technology and the field, so what used to be a multi-year course really is something that is a lot more accessible to students now because technology has become a lot easier and kids come in with more prior knowledge that allows them to accelerate their own studies. So we're taking a 2-year course, merging it into one, and then those same skills are being found in some of the other curricula. Down below there, some of the name changes for purpose of clarity are noted. I won't read those for you, but they're mostly condensing some of those names to make them simpler to understand. They are how we refer to those courses, and they're shortened by a margin. In the music department, we introduced some techniques classes last year as an effort to provide more individual instruction in instruments. What we found as we rolled that out is that because of scheduling and because of instruction, those classes often overlap. So what we're going to do is we're going to merge those and turn those into instrumental techniques and simply schedule those as a single course. In the internship program, now that it's managed by a full-time staff, we are moving that out of the business department and into its own course number sequence of its own, and we're integrating the educational apprenticeship course into the internship program to make that a little more rigorous and focused on some of the skills of internship. Questions?
I just have a couple. So on the AP tests, we're not going to do the penalty of somebody scores a 3 or lower in terms of the grade, right? It's 1.10.
Any student who takes the test will have that weight.
And if they score a 3 or lower, will they still have the AP on their transcript?
Anybody who takes the test will have that, yes.
So you have to take the test, not just the course.
Students who take the course and take the test we get the weight. Students who are in that course who are not pursuing dual enrollment in a course where there is that overlap will have their course designated as AP. Students who are pursuing dual enrollment will have their course designated for RAC, which is where their credits come from.
But anybody who takes either the course and then the test,
yes,
will have the AP noted on their transcript.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, even if they take the course as AP and don't take the test, it will still be noted as AP.
What percentage of our kids who take the test, what percentage of our kids who take the course take the test?
It's between 75 and 80% in recent years.
And is there a particular reason why somebody wouldn't take it? I mean, I wasn't a test taker, so I would probably avoid anyway. But is there a particular reason why somebody wouldn't? Is it that they don't do well in tests, that they're not, properly prepared? Because I think that, some people may not have the wherewithal to do the prep for whether it's SAT or AP or whatever. Is that or
I don't think preparation is the reason. The students are in the course, and that the course is really designed to prepare them for that. I think the reasons are going to vary. We've not studied that, but anecdotally, some students simply don't want to. Some students say that they don't need the support. My opinion, if you were going to put that level of work into studying something for that long and are prepared to do it, I would love to see them take the test so that they really can prove to themselves what they committed themselves to for the year.
And how many AP classes have dual enrollment?
7.
And how many AP classes do we have?
We have, fluctuates a little bit, 17.
So we don't have dual enrollment in the other 10 because it's not offered by RAC, or it's not,
Is there a variety of reasons? Sometimes it's stats, sometimes it's not, the instructor doesn't qualify. But by and large, it's, it's one of those 2 reasons.
So is there any value in, I'm sure there's a cost associated with it, but is there any value in getting instructors up to speed to make that dual enrollment a possibility for the other 10 courses?
I think with the AP being available for them, that really is going to be the more affordable and more highly recognized college credential. So I think that's really what we have in place. And,
but what I'm saying is somebody would take dual enrollment because they want the credits so that they could perhaps add something else on their college schedule, or be sort of a little bit more advanced or a little bit ahead, right? I mean, plus it would be a little cheaper. 3 credits from RAC would be cheaper than 3 credits from SAL.
Mr. Trina, I think
maybe
that,
I'm confusing
No,
it.
no, you're definitely not confusing it. I think having dual enrollment programs, for instance, we've been tossing the idea around of partnering with a university for students who want to become teachers and trying to knock out a large number of their course credits that way. So I think there's a lot of opportunities with dual enrollment. I think dual enrollment is potentially problematic when it comes to something like AP, where you can take the test and get the college credit, but then we have this other way where you don't have to. So I think offering RAC or other type of dual enrollments around AP, not duplicative of AP, is probably the best strategy. So I think the more different ways and different courses we can get kids accelerated into the college program, I think that's a benefit. I just think targeting courses that aren't necessarily AP, since they have a mechanism, is probably a better direction to focus on skilling up our teachers to offer that.
I'm not in education, I guess. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that you took the input from people in the community around addressing the weighted. I'm pleased to see that the transcript is back. The AP's back on the transcript. I think
it was never off the transcript, Mr. Trina.
Even if you fail, even if you got a
yes,
3
it was all AP was. If you signed up for AP, regardless if you got a 1, 2, 3, 0, it was always there. That was brought up. That wasn't correct. Okay. Yep.
And then, just could you just generally explain the difference between honors and AP? Just because I think, it appears that AP is more rigorous, but I'm just curious to hear an explanation of that.
I could certainly do that, but I would defer to Mr. Campbell. He knows more about his high school courses in terms of an honors curriculum. I would just start by saying the AP is a specific curriculum put out by the college board, and it's literally courses that are teach to the test, right? It is completely designed for you to take that test and be successful and earn college credit, whereas an honors is a more rigorous version of our own curricula, and AP is a completely different curricula. It's owned by the college board. I don't know if you have more to elaborate.
That's a good summary. I think what makes AP different than honors is that what the AP curriculum is in Exeter and in Daniel Boone and in Pittsburgh, because they all are oriented toward that same exam, and they have all had their curricula approved by the College Board. Honors has a lot more variations, a lot more locally controlled. You can make some guesses about what an honors econ curriculum would be, but you know what an AP curriculum would be no matter what school you go to. Both are a more rigorous version of a standard course. And given the depth and quality of the materials that the College Board has been putting out and the success we've seen a lot of students in those programs over the years, I think we can say that the difference between honors and AP is closing in terms of how well kids can do in an AP course.
So one of the things I think I read last week that AP or the College Board shifting their test around or going electronic or something like that. Have we seen as a number of colleges, I think there's like 1,800 now or over 1,800 are what we call test optional now. Have we seen kids backing away from some of the AP tests or some of those things? I mean, I don't think colleges are staying test optional forever. I think they're sort of in a test period to see the quality of the student or how they select somebody to come into the college. But I was just curious if that has enhanced or decreased participation in those more rigorous offerings.
Well, I think it's really important to differentiate or identify what test optional means. Test optional is really referring to SAT and ACT. So although the College Board does oversee both SAT and AP programs, the AP program is a wholly separate part of that admissions process.
Thank you for educating me. I will ask my question a different way. Because colleges may not put as much emphasis on the SAT, do we see kids deciding to forego taking the SAT? Are we still at about that level where we were prior?
I think, last year was really the year that they started to move away from it because of the pandemic and in mass, so I think it's hard to have enough data points to say if we see a consistent change in behavior over that period of time. I would think if colleges continue to have test optional SATs, then students will look at things on their transcripts as to be more of differentiators, because that won't be, right? And so taking AP classes and taking the test, you'll need other ways to differentiate yourself as a strong academic student if you can't rely on, I'm going to get an amazing score on my SAT if colleges are just like, we're not that interested. You know what I mean? So I think just to your point, it'll take a couple of years to kind of level out what colleges are really doing. I think the other thing is colleges are really desperate for enrollment. I think college enrollment across the country went down. I think this statistic I heard, don't quote me, but I think it was like a million fewer students enrolled in college this year than prior to the pandemic. So I think colleges are doing a lot of thinking about how they draw and retain students. It's becoming an economic crisis.
And I'll be curious to see how colleges assess that, 4 years, 6 years down the line. And I talk about colleges, but I don't believe that is the only option for somebody who graduates from high school. I think there are plenty of careers where you can get by on a 2-year degree or some sort of technical training or whatever. This just happens to be sort of what we were talking about. So thank you very much.
Mr. Campbell, one more AP question. My understanding is that the AP exams all happen at the end of the school year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Does Exeter do anything to provide any extracurricular prep program for our students that are taking the AP course in the first half of the year and then have quite a substantial gap between when they finish that course and when they take the test?
Yes, our AP teachers are very, very aware of that, and all of them have various forms of review sessions that they run online or sometimes hard copy, but there's a number of online review sites that they've relied on and continue to look at. Honestly, the College Board has done a fantastic job of beefing out its AP classroom, and that's gotten very favorable reviews from our teachers and as a source for not only instruction, but also review after the course.
Do you see the AP board in the future? Have you heard anything that they may start considering allowing testing for those districts that only do half year programs for their APs?
You know what, that's been a point of conversation among the districts in the county that run on a semester schedule. That has been something that we have asked for years. I have not heard of the college board pursuing that change. But it's something that we've been watching for, and nothing.
Thank you.
Regarding phasing out Latin, are there options for that student that is adamant they want to take Latin that we can provide them or guide them to?
So just to make sure that it's clear, students who are currently in Latin 1 will have Latin 2 as a choice next year, and hence 3 and 4 as well. Your question about whether a student would want to start the study of Latin, that's something that I want to follow up with Mr. Wilczek to see what's out there in terms of on our online resources. In terms of having a brick and mortar in person, I don't see that as being a responsible choice given the numbers that we've seen with the program in recent years.
Mr. Campbell, just to kind of also follow up, I think it's good that the weighting is no longer tied to the exam results. The other area of criticism that I know we've received has to do with the dual enrollment with AP and the fact that the AP delineation gets removed from that. And I believe you said instead of AP, it's labeled with RAC. Do you know why that is, or the reasoning behind it? I think there was some questions as to the student is still taking the AP class, and there was some contention around why are they losing the AP designation.
Oh, they're pursuing their credit from RAC, so that was the rationale behind that. So the best way for, and I think that designation can be powerful, and that's where students, we really want students to be taking that test so that they have that score with them and carry that to colleges when they are applying and enrolling. But RAC is recognized in some places too as a source for credit that students can take to certain colleges.
Thank you.
I have another question, Mr. Campbell. Dr. Miner talked about the graduation rate. Going back to the U.S. News and World Report rankings, graduation is 10% of the total ranking. The highest percentage is something called college readiness. That's 30%, and that's tied directly to AP courses. I won't go through all the numbers, but Exeter is about where we were in total rankings with the college readiness. The changes that you're making, let me ask it a different way. Is one of our goals as a district to increase that ranking, just as your goals are to increase graduation rate, reading, and math? Where does the college readiness stand in our goal setting?
It's one of the reasons that we really are emphasizing students following through in their entirety with their AP curricula and taking that exam to demonstrate their mastery of what they've studied. It's also part of what we want to achieve with getting students exposed to and understand their capabilities with AP coursework, with the AP Human Geography. We know that students are capable of this, and we know our teachers are perfectly skilled at teaching it. So we need to shift that understanding and that the goal on the part of kids and their awareness of their abilities as early as we can. So yes, that is part of what our goals are with those changes.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Kieran or Dr. Meyer? Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Just as a point of clarification, that would be an item to move the Soaring Eagle onto the voting meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Mann. That was actually going to be one of my questions too. And the other item that we would move is item D on tonight's agenda, the conference request. So we will request that be moved also on the agenda for the next voting meeting. And that's the end of my committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Fidler. Finance, Facilities, and Audit Committee, Mr. Mell.
Yes, item A is the contract for Statewide Tax Recovery LLC. This was the business that had given us a presentation back at the January Committee of the Whole meeting. We decided to table that just to get some more information on it. Mr. Fike had made some contacts with some references, which is attached to that agenda item. And this, just to refresh everyone, this is the company that would collect the delinquent per capita taxes, the existing company that we have been using with Berkheimer, so we'd be switching over to Statewide. Is there any other discussion on this? So I think we'll be moving that one to the voting agenda. Item B, per capita tax exonerations. Again, this just follows through with the approved contract of Statewide. We will be pursuing the collection of the remaining 2020 per capita tax delinquent bills, and it would be going to Statewide tax recovery for collection. Any discussion on this item? Okay.
Mr. Mell.
Yes.
So anything that we're currently working with Berkheimer, would that then be transferred over, or would we finish our work with them and just moving forward work would go to Statewide?
Defer that Mr. Fike for that answer.
It's just going here full. So they'll continue to work with the collection that they're doing as of right now. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Item B, we'll want to move that one to the voting agenda as well. Okay, item C, firefighter tax credit. We do have a presentation tonight by Mr. Christopher Jordan. This particular topic, I think the prior board is familiar with this. This had come up a few times last year in discussions, and one of the board members had reached out to Mr. Hemberger and myself, being on the Finance Committee, and asked if they would be able to come here and just reintroduce the discussion. So let Mr. Jordan kick it off here with the presentation.
My name is Chris Jordan. I'm Deputy Fire Chief with the Exeter Township Volunteer Fire Department. Thank you for allowing us to present this evening. The Exeter Township Volunteer Fire Department provides fire protection and many other community services to the residents of Exeter Township School District. Like many other local volunteer organizations, the Exeter Township Volunteer Fire Department is faced with a major challenge in declining volunteerism within our community. As presented to the board in January 2021, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has passed legislature in House Bill 1673 to help first responders across the entire Commonwealth. Bill 1673 is aimed to advance first responder programs across all of Pennsylvania. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Can we wait on that? I'm sorry. This is just my intro. Oh, he's in the room. Okay. I didn't realize he was going through the presentation. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania recognizes this volunteer dilemma and has offered an aggressive tax credit program for fire departments. The program offers up to a 100% tax credit on school taxes for active volunteers. To date, several Pennsylvania school districts have seamlessly implemented this tax credit program. We are here this evening asking the Exeter Township School Board to continue to be leaders in the community by implementing a volunteer firefighter tax credit program for the Exeter Township Volunteer Fire Department members. The tax credit expansion of House Bill 1673 will greatly enhance the Exeter Township Volunteer Fire Department's ability to not only retain current volunteers, but also recruit new volunteers to assist with firefighting and other support functions. And on the screen, we put together a brief presentation to lay out the details of the proposed program. I'm not sure who I'm telling. Okay. So first of all, what we request is a 50% tax credit for all eligible members, and we would cap that at $4,000 per member. Next. To be eligible for this requirement, you must live in Exeter Township or St. Lawrence Borough. You must obviously own a primary residence in Exeter Township or St. Lawrence Borough. You must be a member of the Exeter Township Volunteer Fire Department for at least 1 year prior to being eligible. You must be a member in good standing with the department. And listed below are some of the requirements in order to be an active member with the fire department. We have two different categories. We have firefighters / fire police and what they must do. And then we also have support members that are people that help with financial records, tax audits, and also different fundraising and support efforts that we may have. As far as the cost analysis goes, in 2021, right now we have 21 eligible members. I will say that not all of those members will take advantage of the program for varying reasons. But right now we have 20 eligible members. If you go to the next section. So the estimated tax liability to the school district, we're estimating it will be between $40,000 and $60,000. And the way we came to that number, I did some of the math below. Based on the latest assessments, the average household assessment is $135,400 in Exeter Township. The average school tax bill, and Mr. Fike, you could correct me if I'm wrong, based on that assessment would be $4,630. That's based on the current millage at 34.1968. If we take 50% of that average, it'd be $2,315. And if we took all 20 eligible members times that amount, it'd be roughly $46,300 annually. To put it into perspective, it's about 0.05 to 0.075% of the school district's estimated $79 million annual budget. I hope those numbers are accurate. We can go to the next slide. Some benefits to the program and goals of the program. Benefits are what I stated earlier: to increase recruitment for the fire department, increases retention of our existing volunteer base, and it also attracts prospective firefighters to live in Exeter Township. Next section. The goals of the tax credit. The fire department would advertise the new program on social media, local newsletters, and various other locations to help solicit new members. And our goal is to add 5 new active interior firefighters to serve our community. The Exeter Township Fire Department and Exeter Township School District have had a long-standing partnership. Go to the next section. There's many events that we participate in district-wide. Fire prevention in schools and in stations, homecoming parade and bonfire, senior parade, when we have it, elementary school APT family fun days. We provide lighting for band practices when requested, and we escort championship sports teams when requested, which is happening a lot lately, which is good. I also wanted to state from Mr. Campbell's presentation that I had a conversation today with Mr. Ricketts from the high school, and we're also going to be working on implementing an internship program for the emergency services. So that was a very nice conversation this afternoon. So it's just another way where students can explore the opportunities in the emergency services. So hopefully that comes to fruition, just in the initial stages, but hopefully that happens. And last but not least, we just want to thank you for your support, and together we can continue to make Exeter a safe and a great place to live. So at this time, I'd like to field any questions, if there are any, or comments.
Mr. George, I have a question.
Sure.
The eligibility requirements that you laid out at the beginning of the presentation, are those unique to Exeter Township, or is that part of the current legislation?
That is unique to Exeter Township. The way the legislation is written is that the individual municipality gives the latitude to the organization to determine what the requirements would be to have eligible members as part of the program.
So is that negotiable in any way? I mean, is that something that could flex a little bit based upon the preference of a school district?
Of course. What we did for Exeter Township, in which we already had the ordinance in place with Exeter Township for their tax credit. We gave them a proposal. They had some questions on the proposal about the requirements, and we settled in on what those requirements will be. So it is an ongoing dialogue. The requirements have worked so far. It has gotten people to come out for our current tax program. So, but yes, it would be a dialogue between the school district and the fire department.
Mr. Jordan, you made a comment about varying reasons for why someone wouldn't take advantage of it. Can you give a couple of those reasons?
Oh, I've had a few. One was they didn't want to disclose their tax records because in Exeter Township, you not only have to supply your real estate tax bill, but we also have an earned income tax credit. So you have to supply your W-2, and they did not want to disclose those records. For whatever reason, some people are very funny about their personal information. We do need to provide like a social security number, things of that nature. Some people didn't want to disclose that information. I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but you know, we tell them that it's secure. We hope that the township and hopefully the school district would take good care of our records and that it wouldn't be disclosed. But there are some people that still do not feel comfortable doing it.
Of the amount of members that you have, you say 20 are eligible. How many of the members are homeowners as opposed to renters?
I would say all 20 of those members are homeowners.
Right. But of all of your firefighters?
I would estimate probably another 20 that either are renters or live with a parent where they wouldn't be the primary homeowner, so they won't be eligible. And then the rest of our members either live outside of Exeter Township in St. Lawrence Borough, or they're part of our staffing program, so they live further away and come in to help us provide services.
And I apologize if you've already said this, but you said the township is offering this already?
Correct.
How much, is it also 50% tax credit?
Yes.
With a cap of 4,000?
Full disclosure.
Sure.
So we started, I forwarded the ordinance to Mr. Mel. I apologize, I got it to him late. But the ordinance is in place through Exeter Township. The ordinance, when it was initially proposed, was at 15% because that was the max that they could go. Once the legislature changed that they could go to 100%, they moved that last February to 50%. So now the tax ordinance is at 50%. And what was your other question?
With the $4,000 cap, the same?
There's no cap.
There's no cap.
But quite frankly, on the municipal tax bill, it's much lower. And you're never going to hit that cap on the municipal tax bill unless something astronomical happens with your tax bill. There is also in that ordinance an earned income tax credit through the township.
And what other school districts are doing this in Berks County?
None in Berks County.
None in Berks County. Okay.
There's 2 in Pennsylvania, Cambria Heights School District and Claysburg School District. I think they're on the west side of the state, central western side of the state.
Yeah.
There's some others that are looking into it more locally. We attended a seminar at Albright College in regards to recruitment and retention and some other fire service topics. And this was a big topic of discussion that a lot of the local fire departments, when I say local, southeastern Pennsylvania, not necessarily Berks County, are looking into implementing programs like this because they see the declining volunteer.
I was just going to, Mr. Jordan, with the, as you mentioned, with the volunteer enrollment declining, when that happens, you would eventually see a need for paying for full-time firefighters. Is that correct?
Potentially.
And the cost for one of those was mentioned to be $100,000?
Yeah, approximately. I mean, we estimate a full-time firefighter with benefits could be upwards of $100,000 per year in that position.
And the liability, if that would happen, the liability for that, the township would have to pay that. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, the township would feel the burden of that.
Yes. The taxpayers in general would.
Correct. Exeter Township taxpayers would, they would have to either increase the fire tax or some other things that they may have to do to figure out how to bring on those full-time members.
Thank you.
Mr. Jordan.
Yes.
Okay, so you talked about the 2 townships or the 2 school districts that do currently, and I think I read that they each give $200 per firefighter. Are you aware of their percentage or the amount that they get?
Yes.
Okay, is 200 correct?
The one I know of, the one for sure. I don't know of the other.
Okay, and you said the township is giving you 50% with the account.
Exeter Township. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So, and I just have a question. So, my house is assessed at $100,000. Mike's is $300,000.
Right.
So he benefits a little bit more than I do. But I'm just saying. And I might put in more hours as a fire, a fire supervisor. So to me, I think the percentage may sway a little differently, based upon who puts in more service time. And I know, as a volunteer, it is technically an unpaid position, but there is also incentive plans, correct?
For sure, yes.
Okay. So when you said they didn't want to disclose their earned income, is that part of the 1099 process of the incentive they get also to be a firefighter?
No.
Like, is that not included?
That's not included. No.
And when you talk about administrative or firefighter EMS response, so administrative personnel, what are their requirements to qualify for this?
So the support personnel would need to keep a log of 200 hours in order to be eligible. If you do the rough math, it's about 4 to 5 hours a week on average. It would take a pretty firm commitment to reach that. And currently, this past year, we had, I believe, 4 members that qualified based on their support role.
Okay, so that's 16 firefighter EMS.
16
fire police.
Yeah, 16 fire EMS, fire police, and fire.
Okay.
4 were support.
That's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Jordan, you said there were 20 eligible.
Correct.
How many of those 20 are currently participating in the Township program?
I would say, well, there were 20 eligible for this year, 2021. The last time we presented, there were only 8 that took advantage of that program. So we'll find out this year how many. I'm estimating it will be higher. We have more people eligible this year, which is good. That means more people are coming out. So I would estimate it possibly between 12 and 16 would take advantage of the program. That's just an estimate for this year.
So the 12 who are not participating now, what were their reasons? The reasons you cited, they didn't want to disclose their...
Varying reasons. I mean, I already said some of them. Others were they just didn't turn in their paperwork, to be quite frank with you. There's a pretty stringent process. We have an application they have to fill out. They have to turn in their real estate tax bill that was paid. They have to turn in a W-2. This, as I'm sure some of the teachers in the room can attest to, some people just don't get it done.
Who would verify? One of your slides had all of the information.
Sure. And we can go back if we need to.
Yeah. What if we could do that?
Are you looking for the estimated tax expenses?
No, the one that they have to prove that they're...
Yeah, one slide. Yeah, right there.
Whose responsibility is it to verify all of that information?
Right now, it's the fire chief's responsibility. And when I say chiefs, it would be myself and the fire chief. You would sign off on it.
Okay. And Brian, would you be involved in this at all if we were to approve this? I mean, wouldn't we want to do our own independent verification of all of this information?
Yeah, we'd verify.
And how difficult, how much time of yours would that take?
Didn't really think about it yet.
Yeah.
So can I say one thing? I forgot. With the township, again, part of the requirement is we need to send a notarized list of eligible members to the township. They've never asked for documentation supporting why they were eligible or not, but we have all that available if they would. We keep call logs, we keep hourly logs, things of that nature. You know, obviously Mr. Fike could obviously be involved in the process, but in reality, it should be us providing him with the details of it.
Okay. Also, you listed another slide, you listed 3 reasons: increase recruits, increase retainment, and attract prospective members. Do you have that information for Cambria and Claysburg? In other words, how successful has this program been for their communities in increasing recruiting, increasing retention, and attracting prospective members?
So I talked to the Claysburg fire chief, who is also, was it Claysburg or Cambria? I can't remember, I'm sorry. It was one of them. And he stated that in the last year since they implemented the program, they have, don't quote me on this, I have the letter that he sent me. I believe it was 8 new members and 5 of them are enrolled in the basic firefighting program.
Okay, thank you.
He also underscored that with, he couldn't attribute that to the tax credit, but he just wanted to provide you with that information.
Sure. Thank you.
Did you see an increase with the township credit with
That's
the enrollment?
a great question. When we initially got the township tax credit, we advertised it. We had 8 people email and apply almost within the first, I would say the first week. Of those 8 people, only 2 of them followed through with the process, and only 1 of them has stayed with us the entire time through the process. The township tax credit is very nice and it helps with recruitment. I believe last year the total amount that was credited to the members overall was $3,200 total.
So $3,200 was the tax credit to all members who applied?
Correct.
Individually or totality?
Totality.
Okay.
And I could get you the exact number. I'm just
No, it's fine. It's a very small number compared to 46,000.
Yeah, then that's because of the millage. The millage of the township is 1/10 of the school district. Mike, you got a question? That's right.
Chief, first of all, thank you for your volunteering in the community. I saw you running out of here as I was coming in. So
luckily it was nothing major.
I appreciate your commitment and those. I see Mr. Miller behind you, and I appreciate the efforts that you guys make to support the community. Since this is a committee of the whole meeting and this is for discussion, please don't take this in any way. I want to have some dialogue amongst the board members here. But I just have a couple of questions. What is a member in good standing? What would you, how would you characterize that? Is that somebody who, conforms to the policies or the?
So there's a few things. We're actually going through a process right now where a member needs to pay a $5 per year dues. If they don't do that, they're given to the personnel committee, and they may not be active. It's basically our way to, how do I put this, purge our membership. If you're not interested in participating and you can't come out to the calls, then you're not going to be part of the active roster. The next step we would do is we would track their activity level. So we keep a monthly tally on how many calls people run. After that, we knock it down to how they respond to the severity of the call. For instance, I would have never ran out of this room tonight if it would have been a minor accident. Okay, and don't take that the wrong way. I go to those too. But this was reported to be an apartment on fire, so I left this evening to go. Luckily, it was nothing. But we look at who responds to which incidents. If we have a medical call that may require 2 firefighters, we don't incentivize or we don't necessarily need 20 firefighters coming out for those calls. The next thing we do is we look at their activity levels in our meetings. We have basically 12 meetings a year. We require them to attend at least 3 of those meetings to be eligible to vote and be a member in good standing. We also look at our training sessions. They need to log a certain amount of hours. We look at community events. Now, the community events over the last couple of years have been a little bit down, mainly because people have either canceled or they couldn't have them. But there's many other things we look at to answer your question. And our goal is to get every member to an active status and be that member in good standing with the party. That's the ultimate goal.
But it seems there's a fairly well-developed program and you guys manage it.
We try. I mean, I'll be totally candid with you. I've collected 8 sets of gear from inactive members over the last month because they're not active and we need to get that gear back to make it productive for another member.
Okay. And this can also help to stabilize, even if it doesn't grow, even if it stabilizes, that would sort of be a benefit as well.
Correct.
Are there any, I guess you sort of already talked about this around enhancing or retaining recruitment. I mean, are you confident that that marketing campaign for recruitment will yield new members? I mean, are you looking for people across the spectrum? I asked for a metric on something else. What's the metric of a firefighter? What is the average Exeter Township firefighter? Is that?
So I think you brought up a good point, Mr. Japina, earlier. You said the goal of the program might be to stabilize as well and maintain that number. That's where the retention comes in, to keep the members we currently have active. There's a lot of talent within this township that were firefighters, could be firefighters, already have the training. I'm hoping something like this, plus other incentives we offer, could bring them out and participate. There's firefighters within this township that go to other municipalities to volunteer. We want them to stay in Exeter. There's firefighters that are looking at a house in Exeter and they say, you know what, I'm going to buy that house in Spring Township. And they're good firefighters. We want to entice them to come to Exeter. So we try to advertise our programs. Sometimes we get criticized for advertising our programs because we're very proactive when it comes to Berks County municipalities when it comes to this type of stuff. Mr. Mel brought up about career firefighters. Spring Township in the Wilson School District is career. They have a budget that's more than, I'm going to say it's more than double ours. I think it's actually triple ours as far as the firefighting goes. That's one thing we're trying to avoid. So the goal is to retain, but also recruit. And our hopes would be that these advertisements that we would do once approved would again help keep our people, bring people in that are already trained, but also bring people in to be trained.
I have a question for Mr. Fike. Has there been any, or I guess anybody, has there been any, or maybe Sharon, has there been any sort of, I can't say that has there been any. I know there has been some legal interpretation of this piece of legislation.
There hasn't been any actual decisions or lawsuit decisions. There is some concern about the uniformity of picking out a specific subgroup and allowing for some sort of tax break. Now you do have that riddled throughout the tax code, so it does exist for various constituents. We haven't. Our office hasn't done a thorough look at, the implications. It's just that there is a little bit of a concern that there's a lack of uniformity, but I can't tell you right now which way that would tend to fall.
So when you say lack of uniformity, do you mean it's sort of like if you've done it for this group, you might have to do it for that group, or you're setting a precedent in some respects?
Yes. And as I said, there are already carve-outs for various groups, so I'm not saying it can't be done, but we haven't looked into it.
Okay. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
By no means am I a lawyer. Never claimed to be, trust me. But I know that in 1977, Pennsylvania set up the LERTA for tax abatements for different groups, which you guys have implemented in the past. I will offer this: the Cambria Heights solicitor of that school district has offered to answer any questions that the board may have, or anybody, Mr. Fike or the solicitor. And that individual was actually the past president of the Pennsylvania School Board Solicitor Association, if I got that right. So that person claims to be very well versed in some of these situations. So if there are questions, that may be something to utilize. I can get that contact information to the board.
Have some discussion with the board, because I sort of have 5 options here that I think we should discuss. I think that we could be all over the place. So one is do nothing. Okay, I don't personally consider that an option that we would want to do. And I'm just throwing this out for debate. Okay, I do know that we do have a volunteer rate that we give people in the school district who volunteer. I don't know, is it $500 a year?
It's up to $5.99 because anything over $600 we have to $10.99.
So
I'm not sure if the township's $10.99.
So you could,
but no matter what, if it's a credit or whatever, it's well.
So you could make the case that just what we've seen up here, they have volunteered on behalf of the school district to do a variety of events and education. So that would be $5.99. If we were to look at all the firefighters, at that rate. The other one is to do a pass-through as part of the budget. So, you can go with 50%. How you're going to pay for this, you just pass that through as some sort of a part of our, budget for next year. And if we're going to do that, we might then want to consider, do we do a 100% waiver? I mean, if you think about the value that we get from having a fire department in this community that can readily respond to our businesses, our schools, and our homes, the tax, so to speak, pales in comparison to what we would pay to have a fully functional and operating fire department.
Now, can I say something? You're talking
But I know we're
with the way it's written here, it's not really a waiver, it's a refund or credit back to it because they have to complete the year to get that.
Yeah, however you guys figure it out on your end, I'm just throwing some, and I know that's easier said than done, I get it, but I'm just throwing this out because, again, I'm looking at sort of the value. I mean, technically, the municipality has the responsibility for providing fire service in the community. It's not typically a school district responsibility.
Correct.
However, there is this piece of legislation. We all benefit from being supportive. Hopefully, knock on wood, we don't benefit, but I can tell you that it seems that every Saturday morning at about 6:45, I hear a fire truck screaming down Perkiomen Avenue. Somebody somewhere is pulling that alarm every Saturday morning at 6:45. And then, I would throw out another option, which is, maybe this sort of fifth option is give it a year and see what happens. So figure out what we want to do it for a year, and and come back and tell us if it's grown, if it's had an impact, if it's really done something. So I'm just throwing those options out there for discussion with the board. I sort of like a year ago sort of thought, well, this really isn't our obligation. Why should a school district do this, et cetera, et cetera. But I think there are some things when you step back and you look at the quality of the service that we get for really, for pretty much, your fire tax is Mike, was it 0.705 mils?
Close, I think it's 0.701.
0.701 mils. Okay, so that's not a significant millage for the responsiveness and professionalism that we get. So I don't know if any of those ideas appeal to anybody. I just wanted to sort of throw them out on the table.
I like your ideas. I think we need to do something. But I think I struggle with the fact that it should be fair to all firefighters, not based on a percentage, because, like I said, assessments are different. Depending on when your house is built, where you build it, how big it is. So my tax credit might be $1,200, Mike's might be $300, and we're putting in the same skin in the game. So I'm looking at more of a flat fee versus a percentage. If I were to look at it, but I will say I will abstain from voting from this. With all transparency, my husband is a firefighter, not technically active, but it is in his future, so I benefit from this. So.
And to answer Mrs. Schaefer's earlier question about the township tax number, it was $3,146. So I was close. I think I said 3,200. That was the tax credit given, and it was actually split across 14 individuals, and 12 of them own property in Exeter. I just wanted to grab the exact numbers.
So this is less than, wow, okay.
Yeah, and listen, I don't want to discredit the township tax credit, but again, I'm here as I'm here fighting for my members because I know that 90% of their tax bill is a school district, and I know that this would make a major difference in our retention and recruitment efforts.
Chris, do you have anyone on payroll right now at the department?
Yes.
And they're not eligible, correct, for this?
They are not eligible. So currently, to answer Mr. Morgan's question, during the daytime hours, we have part-time staff that cover the hours from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And that's been in place for 30 years now.
And if you continue to go with your volunteerism rate or the reduction that you've seen over the last, say, 5 years, when do you foresee you would have to start hiring full-time employees in the department of the township?
The chief has already, the fire chief has already talked to the township and told them that within the next 2 to 3 years to start planning and budgeting for full-time career staff.
And that will be in the overnight as well, not just during the day.
Potentially, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at 24/7 coverage, just because it's getting harder and harder, to get people to come out.
Last question: if this was to go through, or how the township one works, your firefighters that are eligible for it, they have to redo that paperwork every year. It's not a one-time thing, and then they just go out every year. They have to redo all that paperwork in order to get that credit, correct?
Correct. For the township, I just sent out an email to everyone that was eligible with the revised application for 2021 tax credit. They have to fill that paperwork out, and I can share with you the application. I have it with me. And they also have to turn in their paid real estate tax bill as proof, and also their W-2 from the previous year.
Thank you.
Mr. Jordan, do you have any thoughts as to why? Oh, by the way, when was this legislation passed?
The newest legislation?
Yeah.
This was passed
Act
October 2020.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts, or fellow board members, do you have any thoughts as to why, in all that time, with 500 plus school districts in Pennsylvania, only 2 have implemented this? Any
I have a
thoughts?
thought for sure. And it came up at our, again, I want to say this politely. You have to understand that of all of the school districts in Pennsylvania, and many fire departments in Pennsylvania, in Exeter Township, we have a very aggressive fire department. And again, I don't want to toot our own horn, but we take advantage of the programs that are offered to us to try to help benefit the community as much as possible, whether it be through grants. In the last 10 years, we've probably received over $2 million in grants for various things, equipment, cost avoidances for the taxpayers. The other fire departments don't do that. They don't take the time to come to their school board meetings and present presentations like this. They don't take the time to go to their municipalities to prevent programs like this. And quite honestly, some of them probably don't even know about it. The fire departments don't even know about it. Again, just being candid, I know I'm being recorded.
And I'll say to that point, I mean, something you guys just did in the past week was push the township to have a special meeting, because your new ladder truck, was slated to have a potential 10% increase on that, which would have cost $150,000 more, or $170,000 more for that truck. So, I think that you guys are out in front of this, trying to do, as much as you can to minimize the impact on the taxpayer. And again, I'll come back to saying that the fire services that we have in this community for what we pay at this point is pretty darn good.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
That's all right, Mike. You get the gray hair, it's not cool there. But 50-year taxpayer in the community promised his father, Bob Jordan, who we all know, fire chief for 50 years, saved his life. But of the fire tax, most of that went to the new tower truck. That's going to cost $1.75 million. All we have now is that's been refurbished. So a lot of the fire tax is going to maintaining the equipment, replacing the equipment. We have a 20-year plan Bob put together. So a lot of the fire tax money is already going to infrastructure. And I don't know who mentioned it, but I did the calculation. I wish I could sit here and remember how much we'd have to pay in this community if it goes 100% paid. You'll see your taxes go through. I know Emmaus have them there, and then they went union, so it's really more. So I know it's asking a lot for the school to get involved, but all Exeter residents, folks, we're all in this together. These brave guys come out to your house, to the school. Keep that in mind as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Fiddler, you had asked why there's hesitancy among schools. From Pasco talking to other managers across the state. The problem is you have two different taxing entities, even though they're the same municipality. You're basically taking taxes from one and giving it to the other. You know, the municipality has a special fire tax; they can raise taxes, but they don't. So you go after the school district, take their tax money, and give it to someone else, and that's the concern. You know, PASBO, PSBA has, that you're basically double taxed. Take the school taxes and give it to municipality to cover their responsibility.
Thank you.
But I mean, you know, legislatively, I mean, legislatures. Well, no. I mean, you know, I get it. I mean, you know, I'm not thrilled that the legislature decides to spend local money, but at the same time, you know, I'm not going to be calling Harrisburg if, you know, my shed's on fire. You know, so, you know, that factors into it as well.
Mr. Jordan, has there been any discussion, you know, considering that you said you mentioned to the township, or the township's aware that there would be a need for full-time firefighters in the future? Has there been any consideration made by the township of increasing the 50% to 100%?
Great question. We have not proposed that to them yet. However, that it was sort of a gentleman's agreement the last time we proposed 50%, that we would go back to the board and propose the 100%. I'm sure all of you know that that board has turned over nearly, I think it's 80%.
Yeah.
So at this point, we would need to re-propose that to the new board. There has been no discussion in regards to that with the new board that just took place on January 4th or 5th, whatever date that was. And again, to Mr. Japina's point, the priority was to get the fire apparatus approved due to the potential price increase on that apparatus. But you're reading the tea leaves that that's coming up next with the township.
Yeah, just curious. Thank you.
Yeah. And Mr. Mello, it would seem to me that if the township's nut on this so far is less than $3,200 to get a, you know, improved capability, and now it costs you $6,200 versus what it would cost to have a fully functioning, employed 24/7 fire department, you know, kind of makes sense.
Sure.
Chris, in order for your department, if we made this decision to take full advantage of the credit, when would this vote need to happen by what date in order for you to get that advantage?
I don't know. I was a little bit confused. I know Mr. Fike sent, when we were dealing with Mr. Aarons last year, when we made the original proposal, you guys, your fiscal budget and fiscal calendar is a little bit different than the township. I think they run on a calendar budget, correct?
Yeah, and Sharon and Montaigne could correct me, but I think this would have to be in the tax ordinance approved in June if you're going to do it for next year.
Well, I guess it would depend on the ultimate form of what was decided to be allowed. If it was a sort of a flat thing that like you have for your other volunteer, which I didn't know you had.
It would be in the budget itself.
Right. So if you handled it that way, then you wouldn't necessarily have to. If it's going to adjust tax rates, then yes.
So I think the ultimate goal, to answer your question, Mr. Morgan, would be to somehow get this approved so that it can affect the taxes that were paid in August. If that's not possible, I'm not sure when the next time frame is. Again, your budget runs a little bit differently than the township. So if it can't be effective for the 2021/2022 budget, then it would have to go to the 2022/2023 budget. But I'm not sure of your time frame. I know you guys approve your budget in June. So I guess the next step would be to try to get something approved for next year's budget. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you can't make
Yeah,
it
because
retroactive.
We only have those 3 months to reopen our budget.
Right.
We've passed that time frame.
So I guess to answer your question, it would be as soon as possible to affect the June budget approval.
So, Mr. Mel, I agree with Mr. Japina that this is it's a good cause. I think that we have a lot of options on ways we can do it. I personally don't know that I'd be ready to vote on a decision of how we do that this month, because I think that we need to see a preliminary budget from our administration. We can certainly take I would think that we could take a straw poll of an agreement of an idea that we like. Mr. Japina offered 5 different ideas. I think they all had their own validity, and then see how that works into the preliminary budget, and then decide whether we would have to reduce it, whether that plan worked. But I don't know that I could make a decision tomorrow without seeing the preliminary budget for next year. That's just my thought.
Yeah, I guess it would be a good question actually. Maybe the administration might even have an answer for now. I know it was presented in last year for this year's budget that there was a 3-year plan to try to eliminate the structural deficit, and I think probably one of the big questions I would have is what would this do to that plan of eliminating that structural deficit.
Can I make a suggestion? I think the first thing you really need to do is authorize the solicitor to look into legality and really research this first.
Correct.
Before we even talk further.
Yes, right. Yeah, you're
So
right.
I mean, that might be the first step.
You're right.
Maybe,
and that's where it left. That's where it left off in June.
Maybe push that to the voting meeting.
I mean, Mr. Flake, with all due respect, that's kind of where we left it the last time.
And they never had the solicitor go further.
Right. So I guess
so they need to make a motion at the voting meeting to authorize the solicitor to review it, get back to them, but that was never happened before.
Yeah, whatever the process is, quite honestly, before you guys want to spend taxpayer money for the solicitor to research it, I mean, maybe someone wants to reach out to the solicitor at this other district.
I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, I'm sure I know who he is.
That'd be great. I mean, but I know that they have to approve you to do that too. So.
It seemed to me that if the intent, we're only in February, right? So if the intent is to try to get something, up or down vote, whatever that's going to be, we have some time to do it, right? I mean, we're gonna, if it's for next tax for our 22-23 school year, that would be the budget we're approving in June, right?
And I could also look at some of those parameters, some of the different options that were mentioned in terms of how they're going to hold up. Because if you're adjusting taxes, it's a different legal question than if you're giving some sort of just benefit that you do already.
A refund or a rebate.
Right.
So if that is the consensus of the board, are we saying we do want to put something in the voting agenda next month to authorize the solicitor to investigate the options that Mr. Japina presented here tonight?
Yes.
I know.
I mean, that's me.
Yeah.
And again, just to reiterate, this is our proposal. We wanted to present it to you guys. I think Mr. Japina brought up some great points. I think Mrs. Schaefer brought up some great points as far as how the program could be structured. The main purpose of the presentation is to express the importance of this. And we understand that there's a lot of due diligence that you guys need to do on your end to make sure that it works. But it would be very impactful.
Mr. Jordan, I just want to say thank you for coming out again. I'm not saying that to dismiss you. I'm just saying I do believe it's important that we continue this conversation. I do feel like we kind of kicked the can for a while there with this, but I would like to see us definitely keep this conversation going so we do get to a conclusion. I'm a big supporter of the fire department. I used to be involved with the EMS when I was younger, so to me it's very important. But with that said, my priority has always been that our money goes to educating our kids. I liked what Julie said also, that if we're going to give an incentive, it should be to all firefighters and volunteers, not just to the few that are homeowners. So if I were to move forward in agreeing to something, I'd probably lean more towards the $5.99 per firefighter. So yeah, if we can definitely keep this going, that would be great.
The only thing I would say to that is, again, the ordinance or the legislature that was passed was based off of the real estate taxes. By paying the real estate taxes, getting that credit back. So again, I think the solicitor would have to research that. But if you have a program in place already where by doing certain criteria you can get money from the school district, the issue is those individuals aren't paying taxes. You see what I'm saying? Like you mentioned every fire. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Pretty good for not being a lawyer, Chief.
I could put my 13-year-old to work.
One more year.
Needs to get off video games. No, I mean, you don't want me, trust me.
Bob, you have 14 of us that have either been putting out fires for the last 2 years or fanning them. I'm not sure. But yeah, we're familiar with fires. But thank you for your effort too, and for your recruitment and for your commitment to Exeter Township. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
That's it for my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mel. Policy Committee, Dr. Hamburger.
Thanks, Dr. Herring. We have one item on the agenda this evening for discussion. It's first reading for policy 805, which is emergency preparation and response. I'll let Mrs. Harris talk a little bit about why this is on the agenda and what kind of modifications or changes are in the draft that we can expect to see at the next voting meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Hamburger. So the revisions to this policy center around addition of language related to threat assessment teams. You've been hearing that theme from me over the past couple of policy revisions. So this is following that similar vein. We also updated our safe to say procedures to reference threat assessment teams as well. There's also a revision in this policy. If you recall, beginning of the pandemic, PSBA endeavored to review all of their policies as it relates to the pandemic in thinking about things we haven't thought about before as school districts. And so there's an update to this policy around emergency planning that actually references language related to alternative instruction in the event of an emergency. And it's not specific to what that alternative instruction is. It just acknowledges the idea that as part of emergency preparedness, school districts need to think about that idea of alternative instruction in that process. Next month, you're going to be seeing from us sort of our culminating policy related to threat assessment teams. It will be a brand new policy, again, as a result of Act 44 of 2018 and subsequent amendments to that act.
Thanks, Mrs. Harris. And one of the things that a few things that I saw in this revision, indicated that there were some additional hyperlinks and references to either statute.
Yep,
or
there's some
changes in
updates
school
to
code.
citations.
Yep. And then, as you had mentioned, the continuity of learning, there's a whole section called continuity of student learning core operations, and that's what you're referring to in terms of the changes that really allow districts to be based on emergency conditions to be able to kind of provide the sort of a modified instructional format, whether it's web-based instruction or other forms of assignments that might be mailed to the family.
Correct, and that part of that update in that section is related to the citation in that it connects it to our calendar policy as well, which we revised some time ago, which also includes that language around alternative instruction during emergencies.
And you also mentioned the safe-to-say procedures. I just wanted to reiterate that those procedures are not subject to board approval or board modification. That's simply an attachment, and it would kind of constitute more administrative regulations than anything else, I guess, although it's not explicitly titled that. But the safe procedures have been modified as well, I think, to accommodate some of the same things that you just referenced, particularly the threat assessment. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the proposed policy revision?
Dr. Hamburger, I just have a question, just generally. There hasn't been a bigger crisis over the last 2 years than COVID, but so we've sort of gotten away from some of the other potential crises. Do you anticipate anything emerging? I mean, I know student mental health is clearly an issue, and the things that can evolve out of student mental health, whether it's suicide or violence or drug abuse or whatever. And do you believe, as part of the budgeting process, that you have what you need or will be able to get what you need, whether it's through ESSER's funding or through the district, in order to address those issues?
So all good questions, Mr. Dupina. Yes, we definitely are, so right about the pandemic, and that is one of the big, crises that we've faced over the last 2 years. But I would reiterate that the mental health crisis has traveled right along with that. And so to that end, we do have some initiatives that we're undertaking. I'd be glad to go into more detail with the board in a presentation if you'd like. Again, as we've had these larger conversations, I've referenced things like additional trainings that we need to do with staff at all levels, the development of comprehensive crisis response teams across the district. And I'll teeter on the line there of talking about school safety in public session. But to answer that question, yes, there are definitely some things on the horizon that we're working on in that venue, and I can present on them. There are trends in our data related to mental health, so we've had a significant increase in mental health referrals. We've had an increase in student fights, which is a nationwide trend, not just an Exeter trend as well. And so, again, refocusing on a comprehensive look at all of those aspects of school safety and student wellness. To answer the question about the budget, we will see. We're working on that right now. We're in the process, and we're submitting our budgets to Mr. Fike, and then they'll go through budget review process. So I'm hopeful. Again, I think the board has a really good understanding of that idea that student basic needs need to be met in order for students to be able to learn, and mental health is a basic need.
Thank you.
Ms. Harris, when we look at these policies, and they are so important, I think about just this year, we've had that I'm aware of, at least one incident at the junior high school and at the senior high school. When those incidences happen, does your department take time to do some kind of a debrief, look at the policies, have an opportunity to learn from what we did, what we could have done different? Did we adhere to how the policy was supposed to act? Because obviously we do drills, but can't always guarantee. A lot of this is on the fly that you guys have to make these decisions. So just curious is when something happens, what the after looks like.
So yes, part of it is looking at policy, but more importantly, it's about looking at regulations and procedures that we have in place and the frameworks that we have in place for being able to respond to different crises and different incidents. And so that's really what we debrief on is our framework in place that we have in place right now effective? Do we need to streamline that framework? What additional things do we need to add? What resources do we need, et cetera, et cetera. So, for example, when we had the unfortunate student death over the holiday break, part of that process as we moved into the week when school came back was we met as a team at the high school to do a debrief and discuss things that we felt went well, things about our process that we wanted to tweak, things that we felt like we still needed to follow up on in that process as students came back from school, etc. So one of the things that we'll be looking at, I'll just give you a little more insight with regard to crisis response, is a comprehensive training for all stakeholders that are involved in crisis response. I have something that I'm working on with the IU that they are going to sort of be rolling out countywide in terms of a research-based crisis response. But of course, I asked for Exeter to be first in the training. And part of that is training stakeholders that are district-level team stakeholders, meaning district administrators, and then also training folks who are doing direct response. That would be counselors, school psychologists, social workers, etc. And then working within that in sort of incidents command framework that you'll often hear law enforcement reference in order to deploy our teams when we have incidents and crises.
Thank you.
More to come.
Any other questions on this policy? For our very involved, I think very thorough program of student safety. You know, I'm very impressed. You know, I've seen other districts attempt to implement, you know, mental health and school safety initiatives, and I think we're doing a great job here from my, you know, 3,000 foot view, let's say. So thanks very much for all your work.
We have a very committed team here at Exeter.
I see it. That's all for my report. Thanks, Dr.
Thank you. At this point, we move to public comment. I don't have anyone signed up on the sheet, and there's really no one here, so I'm assuming there will be no comments tonight. We're going to be moving forward the following items to our voting agenda: the meeting minutes, the Soaring Eagle, conference requests, statewide tax recovery, per capital tax exonerations. We're going to move to vote to allow our solicitor to further investigate the firefighter tax credit and options. And lastly, the policy for first reading. At this point, are there any board members that would like to be heard? Okay, then that concludes our Committee of a Whole meeting. We'll be back Tuesday, February 15th, 2022 for a voting meeting. Thank you.